My name is James Carriero, 27 years old. I suffer from major depressive disorder and generalized anxiety. Growing up, I didn't really know anything about mental illness, obviously. It wasn't until I was about 15 years old that my mother recognized I was having symptoms, and this is something that runs in my family. She's dealt with it pretty much all of her life as well. It was just something that she saw in me, and then eventually that led to me kind of coming to the conclusion that I had some sort of mental illness. So I was hospitalized actually recently. It was maybe a month ago. I was self-admitted into Bryland, which is a psychiatric hospital. I was there an entire week. It was quite an experience for a couple different reasons. It was very different to be around so many others that were affected by different sorts of mental health issues, and at varying degrees as well. You're kind of only left to your own thoughts, and you're almost forced to socialize because there's nothing else to do in there. There's 2 TVs that you have to share with everybody else. There's no phones. You could sit and read, which I suck at, so you kind of have to walk the halls and interact with people. And then there's group therapies going along all day at different times, at different activities. You meet with the doctor every single day. The experience for me, in hindsight, was extremely positive. When I was there, I could not wait to get out. It's just such a different atmosphere that I'm not used to at all, just being so confined. You can't leave the floor. There's a phone you can use to talk to people, but you just feel so disconnected and so, I don't know, you feel inside of yourself a lot. It was weird, it was different when I was there. Afterwards, I felt like it really given me, 1, a perspective, and 2, it definitely allowed me to get the right sort of help in a fast manner rather than going every month to a psychiatrist. I went in there pretty well stabilized anyways. I've never been suicidal. I don't know why. I often ask myself that question, weirdly. But as bad as my mental health issues have gotten to me, it's weirdly the one thing that I've never even thought about. And so just seeing that in other people, seeing how different and wide range, it really put things into perspective for me. Let me know where I sat and just see other people's experiences, and to know that you're really not alone in this, and everyone there is pretty much trying to help each other, and even in the most subtle ways, which is just talking and communicating. And the group therapies are really great. The counselors, the doctors, everyone is actually really nice, and they definitely knew what they were doing, and some really great conversations were had there. When I hospitalized myself, or self-admitted, or whatever you want to call it, I was probably not as bad as I've been in the past, but I was so aware of what point I was at, and I knew to go through the long process of going to a psychiatrist, changing your meds, waiting 3 to 4 weeks, going back for a checkup. That was something that was impractical, and it was a waste of time. For me, going to the hospital was the quickest way to get better, and because I hate wasting time with mental health. Mental health has taken so much of my life, just on trial and error and waiting for results. These are things that you get on new medicine, you have to wait, between 2 weeks and a month to see if it even works for you. And then you can start getting better. If it doesn't work, you kind of got to start all over again. So for me, it was at a point where I was just feeling so tired and hopeless, in a sense that I just didn't want to do anything. I just wanted to come home and sleep. And even if I had things to do, I'm like, well, I guess I could just sleep instead. There's nothing that my brain wanted to bring myself to do. And so it was at that point, it was like, something needs to get fixed, and it needs to get fixed now. And I knew that was the option for the quickest help. Yeah, so being in there and seeing everybody else at the different levels of mental health, it definitely let me know kind of where I did sit, it definitely made me humble. Like I didn't want to, like, I seemed really bad, but yeah, there was people in there that were worse than me. There was, patients in there who were not self-admitted, who were admitted there because they had tried to take their life. The first maybe day or two I was in there, it was kind of a shock to me, just to see, like, and you see all these other people that are mostly depression-based cases, I would say, and just to see how down and out they are, you get kind of taken aback by it. But once you kind of overcome that step and see them beyond their disease, then you can foster this growth with them. And I think that was the most important thing about it. Right now, currently, I'm in such a good cycle. And I call it a cycle because I know eventually it'll go away and I'll be right back to where I started. Because these things only last so long with the type of meds that you get used to, and they run their course and you gotta go on new ones or up them or change them. But so it's funny because looking back at it, you don't really see it anymore. It almost like it goes away, and it's like, why was I feeling so down in the first place? When you're in the moment, yeah, it's extremely difficult to get through the day. I mean, there was times where I would work 3 hours and just be exhausted. I mean, when it gets to that point, like, I really notice that I'm working less, I'm sleeping more, I don't want to do anything, I don't want to see anybody. For me, all I want to do is just sleep and hide. And it's that just crippling fatigue that really gets to me. Like, there's so many things I guess I want to do, but at the end of the day, at the end of that thought process, I just go, I'm just gonna lay down. I'm so tired, I need to sleep, and then I'll feel better. And you never do. And so it's kind of this, you're never gonna get out of it that way. So that's kind of like, that was always the hardest part for me. It was just so mentally and physically fatiguing on me. My body would hurt. I couldn't think straight. I had, hopeless thoughts like, when is this gonna go away? Can this ever go away? I'll just sleep it off, and it's not like a cold. It doesn't work like that. You can get all the rest of the world. I'll sleep 10 hours a day and still need to sleep 10 more hours. It's just something that you can't escape from. Speaking on stigmas to mental health illness, that's tough for me to answer. I personally, I've never experienced them on myself. People don't understand it. I remember one time I tried to explain to my friend why I would be the way I am sometimes, and I told him, like, I just have major depression, and sometimes that's just who I am, and he definitely didn't understand it at all. He's like, oh. Even some of my own family members will just snap out of it. I don't take that personally. I think a lot of people with mental health will take that personally and take that as an attack. I don't, because if you don't know what you don't know. And if you've never had really someone close enough to you that has mental health issues, you wouldn't know anything about it. Why would you? I mean, people hide mental health issues all the time. I mean, there's some friends that I know, or acquaintances, I guess, that they have no idea I'm affected with these issues. We're all so good at hiding stuff, and when you're feeling good, they don't notice. When you're feeling bad, you just put a mask on and go about it. So I think we're at a time right now where it's becoming a critical issue. I think awareness has gotten a lot better, and just information and knowledge for people that wouldn't normally get it are now understanding and seeing it like it's literally a disability listed on job applications now. Like, it's under the disability category, which I think is a huge improvement just to the awareness. I hate being on medication. I guess, okay, so I guess I don't hate it because I take it and I have to, but for me to rely on medicines just to function normally, it's kind of defeating. Like every morning I have to take 4 pills, which I guess is not a lot, but just to be so heavily reliant on medicine to go about your day-to-day life, it's not something you want to do. Nobody wants to rely on something like that. And now I say, well, when the apocalypse comes and we run out of these medicines, what am I gonna do? I mean, eventually, I guess I can go off them and try to do more natural forms, which I've tried and it doesn't work. Medicine, it definitely has its place in mental health. I'm thankful for it because I've tried going off meds, I've tried to do it without it, and I've lost that battle every time. And it's just tricky. It's a painful process mentally. There's definitely some side effects to them, obviously. And these are just things that I deal with kind of day to day. If I don't take them, I get really weird headaches. So it's kind of just, they're part of my life now. And I don't like that I'm so held on to them just to function. So for people who are affected by mental health or think they might be, for me, I consider myself a very transparent person. I kind of don't care what people know about me, especially if it's true. Like, it's true, it's true. So I'm very able to talk about it. I know that's tough for some people, and I get that. I think opening up to at least one other person and maybe even just saying, hey, I need something. You didn't say I need help, I need something. Something's not right. It can be very confusing when you don't know. I mean, I've dealt with it for, most of my life, so I kind of have come to terms with it and know what it is, but if you don't know what it is, it's confusing to your body, it's confusing to your brain. You don't know what's going on, you don't know why you're feeling the things you're feeling. Talk to one person. My favorite thing in the entire world is going to see a psychologist. I recommend counseling for everybody. Besides medication, that's the most beneficial thing for me is counseling. Being able to talk and strategize and come up with methods of training your brain to think differently. And even just to open up to somebody who doesn't know you, and that's their job. It makes it somewhat easier, because they don't know who really you are. I mean, if you're not comfortable opening up to your friends because you're afraid of that stigma or something, or you don't want to burden them, that's often how I think. I don't want to bother anybody with my illness. So counseling I definitely highly recommend.
My name is Angela Rockline. I am 21 years old and I am a type 1 diabetic. Type 1 is juvenile. They think it is due to having a previous virus, which makes your body's immune system attack the pancreas, so you no longer make insulin. The other functions of the pancreas are still working, you just don't make insulin. Type 2, you can get rid of with proper diet and exercise, and it's usually due to poor diet and exercise. The big difference is type 2 you can get rid of, type 1 you cannot, and a lot of people think that they're like the same thing. I get the question a lot of, do you have the good diabetes? There is no good diabetes. I just have the one that you can't get rid of. So that's the main difference between the two. I didn't realize that what I was getting diagnosed with was something I would have to deal with for the rest of my life. I was really scared. I knew of other people who had type 1, a kid in my grade, and my aunt, but I never knew what it all meant and what it all was. I kind of just knew, hey, he has type 1 or he's diabetic, and I think a lot of people know at least someone, but they don't know what they have to go through on a daily basis or that they have to do that for the rest of their lives. It means a lot of things. It means strength and anxiety, depression. Like, I say this as like moods, but that's really what it is. It's a lot to handle at one time, and each day is different. Today I woke up with a blood sugar of over 350, and right now I'm at 120. So throughout the day, it can mean something really bad in the morning. And then at night, I can be afraid to go to sleep because my blood sugar is going to drop. So there's just so many different adjectives I can use to describe it, but nothing will ever pinpoint exactly what it means to me. I hate this question. I get this question all the time. Or people who knew me before diagnosis are like, you're such a different person. I'm like, well, yeah, I have a chronic illness now, so I'm never going to look at life the same. I was very active. I did a ton of sports growing up. I mean, I ate okay for like someone who's like 13. I wasn't on like a strict diet or anything by any means. I was so happy all the time. I was worry-free, and now I'm always worrying. Even though I have a sensor that tracks my blood sugar for me 24/7, I still can't help but think, what if it's wrong? Like, people don't realize that when you have a chronic illness, it's not just, oh, you have to give yourself a shot, or like you have to go through chemo, you have to do this and that. It's everything else that you have to think about. I do take better care of myself in the sense of I watch what I eat, like I count my carbohydrates, but I also look at like the sodium intake of things. I'm looking at serving sizes. I never did that beforehand. I would say, compared to other diabetics who were diagnosed much younger, this would be easier for them to answer because I was 13, so I knew to an extent, I have to do this or I'm going to die. That it's plain and simple, that's what it is. So I would say giving shots is a big thing for a lot of diabetics because no one really likes needles. And I was never terrified of them, but giving myself shots on my own and tracking everything myself, probably 6 months to a year after being diagnosed, was huge for me because my mom is a nurse, which is very helpful, but just feeling comfortable doing anything on my own. Coming to college and dorming and being away from my comfort was a huge step forward for me. And I still struggle today, you know, with my anxiety and my depression, which makes me nervous about being alone and not being around people who know what to do if something goes wrong. But I've learned to push past it to the best of my ability because it's always going to be something I worry about. Having to figure out how to handle diabetes in every scenario that I'm placed in is something that I always have to achieve and push past because my mom or my dad or whoever is not always going to be there to help me, especially now that I'm 21. I went to diabetes camp, which is something that people don't think is a real thing. I went there, I think, a year after my diagnosis, and that was huge for me. I was terrified to go because I didn't want to be away from my mom, and I don't really feel comfortable sleeping at other people's houses. So like being in a cabin with a bunch of other people, that was a big thing that was so much fun for me and was something that really pushed me to do more. So it was such a positive impact on myself. One of my best friends, her name is Ashley. She's a few years younger than me, but her brother is diabetic, and that's how I met her. And if I didn't have diabetes, I would have never met her, and she is one of my absolute favorite people on the entire planet. One of the biggest things that is really hard for me is sleeping because there is a term called dead in bed syndrome, and it is as terrifying as it seems. It's when a diabetic goes to sleep and their blood sugar is stable, and somehow throughout the night it just plummets and they don't wake up, so they die while they're sleeping. And my diabetes educator, who I loved so much, just died from that. And that was a concern that I have had from the beginning, and I told her that, and she always told me that I'd never have to worry, that would never happen, and now she's dead because of that. So even with a sensor, even with every piece of technology that I can have connected to my body, something can still happen to me. And I don't know how to get over that. My doctors have told me many times, if you have a sensor, you'll be okay. If you have this, you'll be okay. As the time goes on, I'm hearing more and more about children or, adults, anyone who have had this happen to them and they've died. I somehow have to feel comfortable going to sleep at night. It's something I have to work through, obviously, because I can't just not sleep. That is like one of the biggest things that I struggle with. I always have, and I think that I always will, and a lot of people don't understand it, but hopefully after watching this, they will. One thing that people don't realize is high blood sugar and low blood sugar have symptoms, but just because there are symptoms doesn't mean you're going to feel them, which is one of the reasons why the dead in bed syndrome can happen, is especially when you're sleeping. Your body is at rest. And if you're not having any symptoms, your body's not going to wake up. This can happen with high blood sugar or low blood sugar. And if you don't have symptoms, you can be out in public and just pass out. Your blood sugar can skyrocket within 30 minutes. Like, anything can affect your blood sugar. So even if I eat a piece of cake and give insulin, that doesn't mean that I'm going to be fine within an hour. Not having symptoms is a really scary thing, especially when I was 3 years into my diagnosis and I wasn't feeling my low blood sugar symptoms. If you have low blood sugar and don't feel the symptoms, you can pass out, have a seizure, go into a coma, or die. If you have high blood sugar and you don't feel the symptoms, your body creates what's called ketones, which, what I was taught, are balls of sugar in your bloodstream. And if your blood sugar is high and you have these ketones, it's going to keep rising. And you will get extremely sick. You can go into a coma and die. It's that easy. Like, it can happen like that. Even with everything that I use to take care of myself, it's still something that I am always thinking about.
My name is Ian Cherico. I'm 20 years old. I was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia in March of 2016. I have been in remission since August of 2016. It kind of came up really quick. Everything that led up to me being diagnosed was within a week. And when I got to the hospital, I wasn't sure what to expect. And they tested for a few other things like the flu and mono, and they came back and said, you have leukemia, we need to get you to the hospital now. I wasn't quite sure how to react. I'm sure I was shocked. I don't remember that day too well, because after that things went like downhill really quickly. I just remember throughout that first week kind of joking around half seriously, like, to my mom, oh, I'm gonna die. But it's like, well, I don't know. Is this actually gonna, kill me? I guess that was kind of my reaction. Uncertainty and, could I make it through this? What are the survivor rates? Things like that. Deciding whether to switch to the adult oncology when I turned 18 or to stick with what I had. I had previously 2 rounds of chemo that weren't successful, and I just finished up my 3rd round that also was still not successful. I just turned 18 and I had the choice to switch to the adult oncology. If you switch to the adult oncology, you have the choice of choosing between, however many clinical trials you want to do, or you could stay with pediatrics, which all they are allowed to do is just chemo. The choice was really tough because we were so frustrated at that point. we were even thinking about going to Cleveland Clinic because I knew a friend of mine had actually gone to the Cleveland Clinic for the same thing. And we were kind of going back and forth between, meeting with the adult oncology and having the pediatric doctors come in and talk to us. I was almost talked into getting a 4th round of chemo. And I think that same day we met with one of the adult oncologists, and we made our decision right there. And that whole time between, limbo between being on the pediatrics and going to the adult oncology was kind of scary because I wasn't sure, very unsure of what was going to happen, if I was going to continue with the chemo or if I was going to go on, and what kind of clinical trials will they have, will they work. It turned out to be one of the best decisions I've made in my life. It's very demoralizing being stuck in the hospital. I feel like hospitals shouldn't have windows. I know that's kind of like a catch-22, but like you're able to see out and you see all these people out there, you're like, yeah, they get to walk outside and everything, and I'm kind of stuck in this room here. The first couple months I was in the hospital, they did let me out into their courtyard to walk around, but that was just about it. The only exercise you get is if you do PT, or they have you do rounds around the whole floor, and I think it was like something like 30 times around is a mile. So I did that as much, as I could with feeling, sick and whatnot. The worst time was after my transplant. I had finished my transplant and I was out for 2 days before I was readmitted with graft versus host disease, which is a side effect of having a transplant. And kind of like just, touching the outdoors and then having to be readmitted for, I don't know how long it was, 2.5 months. That kind of sucked. And then it happened again where I was out for, 2 months or so, and then I was readmitted again. Luckily, I've, stayed out of being an inpatient at Roswell, and I've been out ever since. It's just really tough being in a beige room for, however long I was in there for. I think being, in the hospital for that long and, diagnosed with the disease that severe, it kind of gave me a comedic edge. A lot of people say that comedy comes from a dark place, and I'm no comedian, but if I can make light of whatever situation it is, sometimes I might go a little overboard, but if I can, make somebody else's day, better, to, help them forget about whatever they're stressing about, then, that makes me feel good too. I think the first thing that I would say is, well, here we go again. I expect nothing but the best from the people who care for me at Roswell, and I know I'd be in good hands. I'm sure I'd be worrying a little bit. I know it's kind of a big dip in from where I've been. I've been trending upwards ever since I got out of the hospital last, and I think something like that would really kind of devastate my parents, especially. And I think I'd have a kind of a different role to play for them. I was weakened by my first stay in the hospital, and I think that if I can maintain a strong mentality and stay up on my feet, I think that would definitely help me and benefit everybody else as well. I constantly worry about a lot of things. The future is definitely one of them. The biggest outlier in that is, when will these symptoms of the graft versus host disease, which is caused by the transplant, when will they go away? When will I get my full range of motion back? When can I, get a job that, I can actually maybe handle money or food? Because some of the restrictions after transplant still haven't been lifted with me. I'd really like to have Chipotle. I know that, right now that the whole E. coli thing's going around, but I love Chipotle, and, being able to have a burrito again, I think will be a big victory for me. I think that a lot is uncertain still. I'm only 2 years post-transplant, and that may seem like a long time, but compared to a lot of other people, it's really not. Each week I have to worry about my schedule, which I don't know until maybe a week or 2 weeks before when I'll have my next appointment, if I need, a checkup or something for the next week. So kind of trying to schedule around my appointments and things that I have to do, like school and car things and getting a job. It kind of all, packs in and piles up, and it makes you stress out more, which I'm trying to stay very calm and collected. I think the first misconception that I personally learned about is that cancer doesn't cause your hair to fall out, it's the chemo that does. Cancer really is no joke. It's extremely serious, and you have to be very strong, not just physically, but mentally, and it takes a lot to go through even the things that I went through. I'm sure there are much worse situations that other people have gone through. It just takes a lot, and I think that people may underestimate it, and how much it can kind of flip your life upside down for a little bit. If you're in the hospital for more than a couple months, I'd say start doing something. Get up, instead of just sitting in bed and feeling bad, which I understand. I've been there. I understand. Get up, walk around. You can do PT at most hospitals. That definitely helps, because I was a 4-sport athlete in high school, and within 2 months I had basically lost almost all of my muscle. I went out to my bowling league that I was participating in at the time when I was diagnosed, and I think this was 2 months later. It was the last match of the year, and the first time I went up to go and throw the bowling ball, I fell flat on my face because I was sitting in the bed for 2 months not doing anything, and I had no balance. My muscles weren't ready, and it's just up to how you are able to get yourself out of bed in the morning, eat, do all the things that you need to do, and just stay active. Whether you get up, and for me it was creating videos, anything like that.